This is a Clearview Vision stove which I installed 2 years ago. It's about the right size for this room. It's clean burning, which means that it's legal to use it in the Queen's Park area, or the Greater London area for that matter. And we're going to start off by making a fire. So, Elaine, would you like to pass me some paper? I think we just crunch that a bit. Do that. Notice that there's a bed of ash already in there from previous fire.
So it's alright to leave that in, is it?
Well, it's important to have it there, so you do need something to base your fire on.
We need more paper.
Now let's have some cards. A couple of sheets of cards, 3 sheets of cards.
And then when you do want to empty the ash out, does the ash fall through?
That's right, it does. There's this thing called a riddler, which if you move backwards and forwards, the ash falls through the tray, and then you can empty that out. It's very handy.
So you're doing this so that cardboard traps some air? Or?
It's actually to concentrate it a bit so it doesn't burn too quickly. Card's quite good, it's almost as good as kindling. Now let's have a few sticks of kindling, which in this case we actually bought from home, I think. Acquiring
more, or is that enough?
No, that should be okay. And now let's have the smallest log you can find in there.
These logs are actually all, that's probably, is that small enough?
Yes, that probably is. The main thing with going fast is that you don't want to compress everything too much. You want to make sure that air can get at most of it. So there we are, I'm going to go with that. And when you light it, perhaps try and light it in as many different places as possible.
With one match.
You know this, with one match, that's right.
At least you're not trying to do this in a wind or a draft, because it's contained.
No.
And everything's dry.
That helps. Yes. So say cardboard's
is it possible to
good.
get the cardboard to catch? Oh, it is.
It is, yes, and it has started. Right, having done that, close up.
And you prefer this plain corrugated cardboard? I notice you haven't got any old cereal box or anything here. It's all corrugated card.
I just ripped up a huge cardboard box that came delivering something.
Well, that looks quite promising so far. So once you've, of course, you shut the door once you'd.
What I've done is I've opened up the air supply to maximum, but once it starts going, for a wood fire, the ventilation is supposed to come from above, but certainly you would close this bar here, which reduces the air supply. There's a difference between a coal fire and a wood fire. A coal fire likes to be ventilated from underneath, and the wood fire from on top. Anyway, I'm going to keep it on maximum while it's starting, and then when it gets going, I can close down. Then you have this control air supply here, which you can turn down to regulate the rate of burning.
Well, see, there's a thermometer.
Yes, there's a very handy thermometer there, and that takes quite a long time because that actually measures the temperature of the stove itself. But after an hour or so, it can get as high as 200 centigrade.
Can you cook things on here?
Well, we did try once. It's not very practical. Yes, in principle.
Could you keep an enamel pot of coffee warm in here?
Yes, yeah, you could.
Because that's the sort of thing I might like to do. Can you tell us something about what was involved in the fitting? Because I can see you've got a flue going up here, going up the chimney.
Yes, absolutely. Well, you need to sort out how many parts you need. What you actually see here, the basic stove obviously is essential, but you need a joint at the back and some short lengths of tube. This is all in the stove catalogue. I had the most difficult job is putting the flue in the chimney.
Does the flue go right to the top?
It does indeed, yes. And it's an extraordinary thing. It's a flexible stainless steel tube.
I didn't know such
It's like
a
an
thing
enormous
existed.
serpent when it came. It was 10 metres long. And I took it up to the top of the roof. Fortunately, I can stand on the top of the dormer window, access to the chimney, take off the chimney stack and feed the liner down the chimney. It went down with quite a bit of resistance, and in fact I had to tie a cord, and my wife Diana was down at the bottom pulling on the cord and getting a lot of dust coming down her, but we did it. It took a couple of hours to do. And once you've got it in place, you then need to make, I don't know if you can see here, there's a plate that I had to make up that sits in the throat of the chimney, and it's a rectangular shaped plate, and which has a hole in the middle for the flue to come through.
So the chimney's blocked apart from where the flue goes up now.
That's
so
right,
there isn't
yes.
a gap around.
It isn't necessarily, I should say it's not necessarily an issue. No, the reason for it is that once you put the liner in, they recommend that you put insulation down, and it's what's it called, vermiculite. It's a sort of granular insulation. You get great big bags of it and you can fill up the space. And it does make the stove work a whole lot better.
So you pour that in from the top?
Yes. Having put the plate in at the bottom to
Yeah,
stop
yes.
it coming down.
Cool. But if people don't fancy or can't safely get access to the top of their chimney, is that something a stove fitting company would do, or a chimney sweep would help with, or?
Yes, I would imagine you would have to have someone like that, maybe someone with a cherry pick, or someone with a roof ladder, more to the point.
Yes, because it has to be fed in from the top, the flue. You can't push it up from the bottom because that just wouldn't work.
I've not heard of it being done that way, and that whichever way you do it, you still have a problem at the top, because the liner then has to be cemented into the chimney stack.
Otherwise it'll just fall
so
down.
there's always going to be some work that has to be done up at chimney level.
Nick, this looks like a fig tree, a very large fig tree.
You're right, it's totally out of control. It is technically a Ficus carica, I'm told, and it's been here for about 40 years, certainly long before we moved in. And I prune it every other year, but this year I'm pruning it a lot more than usual because the neighbours want more light. So you can see all this massive wood that's come down recently, and of course
Can you burn this straight away, or do you normally dry it off a bit?
No, you could try. I wouldn't recommend it. I mean, I tried. You'd be so disappointed because it just will fizzle out. It's recommended that you season it for at least a year.
Season it means,
well,
that just means let it dry.
Let it dry, yes, that's the word. Keep the rain off it. We'll get to the wood store later, but that has a roof, keeps the rain off, and just let the air movement around it dry it naturally. So the next thing I'll be doing with this is cutting it all up into pieces which will be
We just use some kindling which you bought from Homebase, but you could use this as kindling, could you?
Yes.
It's dry enough.
Absolutely, yes. In fact, it produces more kindling than anything else. But the large logs are not so keen.
That will be bits like that.
That will be good. The stove will take up to 40 centimetre pieces.
Oh, that's quite big.
Yeah. So this is where I put some of those sticks of kindling. And in a year's time they should be fit to use. This just keeps the rain off. And probably not the ideal way of seasoning them, but
works well enough.
It works well enough. Okay, so this is my wood store, which came all the way from Devon on a flat truck and was too big to get in the house, and so I had to take it apart and force it one way or through. But here it is, and it's very useful. It has a roof to keep the rain off, but otherwise it's open-sided and it lets the four winds get at the wood and dry, slowly air dry the wood. You may have heard of kiln drying. That's, for wood that's interesting because it's not like 1000 degrees centigrade, it's more like 40 degrees centigrade. But in this case it's just ambient temperature. Anyway, in this wood store you see some wood which is seasoned, which is ready for use. You see bits of wood I've got from the skip. You see some younger wood underneath, which is probably only 6 months old, which might not be ready to burn yet. on one side of the wood store, I put the stuff that's being seasoned. On the other side, hopefully it's been there for a year already, ready to use.
Oh, you're just about to get it delivered?
Yes, yes, that's right. What's his name?
Pete.
Pete.
Pete the tree surgeon.
Pete Treeman.
Pete Northcote.
Northcote, okay. Right. Yeah, waiting for him to come through with the goods.
So Nick, if this was full of wood, how long would that last you? That's half your wood store.
That would last the whole season, or almost. You know, if sort of about 4 or 5 months, which is all you need really, like from November through to March.
I'm quite surprised really because I think you need a lot more than that if you were burning in an open fire. That doesn't look like very much really.
If it was absolutely full, you know,
yes.
this quantity here, no, that's probably about half the quantity.
It still, to me, suggests that the wood burning stove is very efficient because that still doesn't look like a lot of wood.
It's efficient. They say that if you have a fire in an open grate, 2/3 of the heat goes up the chimney, but if you have a stove, only 1/3 of the wood goes up the chimney. So yes, it's quite efficient, a lot more efficient than just burning in the grate. But of course, in this case, it's only heating one room. Nonetheless, I estimate that probably it contributes 10 to 15% of our heating needs.
That's quite impressive.
Which is, it's a lovely thing to have in the house.
So we're back inside now, and Nick's just been saying that if we hadn't been making this instructional film, we'd have given a bit more attention to the fire and maybe put a bit more kindling and another log on. But actually, Nick mainly uses the fire in the evening, I think.
That's right, yes. I mean, typically if it's cold outside, we'll light up the fire maybe about 6 o'clock, and after half an hour, maybe an hour at most, it's taken over from the radiator, and the radiator is switched off. That's another issue, but the radiator has a control, and that's thermostatic control, so when the room temperature gets up, it switches itself off. And thereafter, it gets hotter and hotter, and you leave it a couple of hours and you're almost into sauna-like conditions, which is interesting. And the best way of doing that was to open the door and let some of the excess heat out, or open this partition, for example, and let some of the heat out into the middle room. But of course you can regulate the fire. You can move the bar in, and you can turn down the control here and set it to a level you like. I think technically it's larger than is necessary for heating this space. Sort of thing you might find in a pub.
Mm. And say you were planning to go to bed at 11, would you stop putting wood on the fire at 10 or something like that?
Yes, yes.
Because then the fire's going to stay hot.
That's right. Make a shrewd guess as to how long it will burn for, and then just not put any more wood on.